So welcome everybody to the second meeting of the Global Synthesis Community. Um, we have been absolutely overwhelmed by the number of participants that registered. We've had more than 600 people register across two meetings. It's wonderful to be online with everybody. The first thing I really want to do is thank the Alliance for Living Evidence for donating these time slots. We were really keen to get things happening really quickly, and these meeting slots were already in place. So thank you to Alive for letting us use these times. Um, we were really hoping that these meetings were going to be much more interactive. We had all sorts of grand plans for what that might look like, but given the number of people that we have attending, I hope you'll all understand that we've had to pivot a little bit, and these meetings are now going to be largely information sharing because we're aware that there is a lot that people don't know yet. But our priority going forward is that there will be both broad leadership and broad engagement with this process. So we're encouraging people to use the chat function, and we will save that discussion. We are committed to circulating a recording of the meeting. We will develop a living question and answer document and also a survey to assist you to provide more meaningful feedback once you've been able to digest what you've heard and to help us to build the next steps of this process. And then we'll set a time for a second meeting. We're anticipating some more information from Wellcome in the coming weeks. And so once we have that and all of your feedback, we'll find another time for us all to meet. And hopefully those meetings will be a bit more interactive. We are committed to undertaking this work in languages other than English. We've worked hard and fast this week to try to translate some of the background information, and I want to thank people who did that for us around JBI's global network. So your microphones have been muted to prevent background noise. We encourage you, if you have English as a second language, to use the captions option and to ask written questions via the chat. I'm going to ask Will and Carla to introduce themselves first. So Carla, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, and thank you very much. It's 5 a.m. for Zoe and 11 p.m. for me. So bear with us. We're going to do our best to be very inspirational because this is a really great moment for all of us. My name is Carla. I'm from Brazil. I've been involved in evidence synthesis for the past 30 years, and I have never had a moment of passion like what we're having now. So I do hope we make the best of that. And I think it's a great opportunity for many of us to really work together and use this opportunity in a way as a collaboration. So we're very excited that you're all here. We had over 200 people in the morning as well. And we look forward to work with all of you. Thank you.
And Will.
Hi everyone, I'm Will. I'm the Chief Exec of the Campbell Collaboration. I have 1 year's experience in this space, having joined just last year in Campbell. It's really exciting to be working together with Zoe and Carla to do something which we hope will serve the whole synthesis community. And it's been wonderful to see the response so far. So really looking forward to having this conversation and then building on it with all of you.
Thank you both. And for those of you who don't know me, which I expect there are many, my name is Zoe Jordan and I'm the Executive Director of JBI, formerly the Joanna Briggs Institute. Like Carla, I've been at this for a long time, more than 20 years, but I've never experienced the level of commitment to collaboration that we've seen in recent weeks. So I'm really excited about moving forward with everybody. So why us? Why now? Our organisations, as I said, we've been working together in various ways for a long time, and we represent three significant global networks that focus on evidence synthesis. At the meeting in Prague, the Global Evidence Summit, we committed to facilitating this meeting based on a challenge that was put to all of us by Jeremy Farrar of the World Health Organization to not just do meetings together, to not just talk, but to really take action. And so we thought we were best positioned as first movers to bring together a really large number of people very quickly to start this conversation. And it is very much just the start of a conversation. So in this meeting, we really want to celebrate our collective achievements. We know that we're not the only ones that have been doing this for a really long time, and we've come a really long way. We want to, at the same time, acknowledge the fact that there are challenges before all of us, and I don't think anybody will be surprised to see what those are. And to recognise that right now we are at a moment in time where we have this really unique opportunity. So to work through with all of you why we would want to pursue that in a collaborative way and what we might do together. We're very lucky that John Lavis has agreed to join us and will spend some time giving us a little bit more information about the Wellcome Trust funding that is going to be made available. So there's a lot to celebrate. Evidence synthesis feels a little like an idea whose time has come. We were saying at the previous meeting that it's kind of like the overnight success that took 30 years. It's been 30 years in the making. But broadly, evidence syntheses are recognised in a way that it's taken us a lot of time to bring us to this point. And they're seen as being highly valuable in both policy and practice. And that's really exciting to those of us who have been fighting for that for a long time. We are seeing now these global events that really encourage this important dialogue in relation to evidence synthesis and its implementation. And those are both multidisciplinary and sector agnostic, which is also very exciting. We recognise that health has been in this game perhaps for a little longer than some of those other sectors, but I think it's really promising to see us sharing our ideas and progress and methodologies across all of these different groups. At the Global Evidence Summit, the United Nations Summit of the Future, and the What Works Climate Solutions event, and there have been others, I'm sure. And it's not just groups like Cochrane and Campbell and JBI. There are lots of initiatives now that are demonstrating this commitment to change, this commitment to doing things differently and to doing things collaboratively. I was reflecting after the meeting last night about the various things that I've been asked to join, which has historically not happened. And so having the great privilege and pleasure of joining the Implementation Council of the Global Commission on Evidence and being able to contribute to the development of things like the Show Me the Evidence statement and the Alive commitment have been really exciting for me and for others, I think. And equally, we're seeing more global media coverage of evidence synthesis, both at the individual synthesis level, but also in a much larger way, really holding us to account to do better. But of course, we still face challenges. And as I said earlier, I don't think any of these will be a huge surprise. There are lots of people on the call who are part of the evidence synthesis production side or the supply side. And there have been lots of publications and work done by groups that demonstrate the overproduction of evidence syntheses and the highly variable quality of what is being produced. There is significant duplication of effort and research waste across sectors. We really have been challenged to deliver more relevant, timely, and affordable evidence syntheses and to prioritise our efforts to meet global knowledge needs, such as those expressed in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Because if we don't do that, we really are putting ourselves behind the eight ball in terms of generating impact. And now we're seeing global funding agencies like Wellcome and specifically the Evidence Synthesis Infrastructure Collaborative recognising that we need to evolve the evidence synthesis infrastructure. So this isn't about new money to do things in the way that we have historically. This is not funding for us to conduct more systematic and scoping reviews. This is about infrastructure. And I'm really excited by that prospect. And I'm equally excited to see that the call is, the foundation of this call is on collaboration and coordination. So to facilitate, rather than those historical competitive processes, something where there's far more cooperation across our various groups. So it's a once in a lifetime chance for us to really deliver on the promise that many of us have been working to for a long, long time, to deliver better evidence and generate better impact, which, when you come from a mission-driven organisation, is something that we really want to grab onto, I think. Now, I know Steve Jobs can be a little bit polarizing, but I love this quote, and I think it really speaks to the effort that we want to make here. It reflects the really ambitious nature of what we're trying to do. And maybe this is a totally crazy idea, but as Steve says, the people that are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are usually the ones that do. And this could potentially have significant impact. And like I said, I come from JBI that's been around for almost 30 years, just like Cochrane has. And we're a mission and vision focused organisation that has always said we want to change the world by providing evidence to inform decision making. So we are asking people to take a little bit of a leap of faith. This is a completely different way of working, and Will and Carla and I have really jumped in with both feet, and we really want to see this work, and we're hoping that today we can bring you along with us. Hopefully I got the passion right for that one. And so I've been using this quote for probably the last 12 or 18 months because it really resonates with me. And I think there's something really nice about the idea that we have the people, the technology, the institutions and resources right before us that are required to achieve the SDGs. It's just a matter of reimagining how we put those together. There's something really liberating in that idea, I think, that we're not starting from scratch, and that we have extraordinary talent and expertise across the evidence synthesis community that we can harness. And if we can do that collaboratively, that we can really do something quite transformational and quite inspirational. So I said at the last meeting, I don't think John Lavis really needs any introduction. I'm sure that everybody on the call knows you, John. But you've been such a key driver in bringing us to this point and creating this really unique global opportunity for us. And so we're excited to hear from you about what that might look like going forward. And I just want to, on behalf of the entire community, I know we did it at the Global Evidence Summit, but thank you for all of your efforts in that regard, and hand over to you.
Super. Thanks very much, Zoe. Great to hear the enthusiasm in your voice. I share that tremendous enthusiasm. You'll see my next slide. And usually I don't speak to my cover slide, but you'll see that I talk in the cover slide about what an extraordinarily exciting opportunity is. I sometimes say once in a generation. Zoe said once in a lifetime. And what I'd love to do is just have a bit of time to walk you through some context for this opportunity. So let's just go right into the next slide. Many of you on the line would have participated in shaping the Show Me the Evidence consensus. Others, we will invite you in future to join us in signing on to this commitment. It's for now a working version. We hope that a much more inclusive process in the months and years ahead will allow us to push it forward farther. Show Me is from the opening letters of these 6 statements. The one that I'm going to be speaking to mostly is feature 2, harmonized efforts globally that make it easier to learn from others around the world. But this global type of work really matters on the ground in countries and at local levels where people increasingly will be pulling together many forms of local evidence, then these insights from around the globe and putting them alongside indigenous ways of knowing and other inputs into decision making. And these harmonized efforts, in part, hinge on our willingness to share data across platforms, across groups, so that we can extract the data once, ideally do things like risk of bias assessments once, and then reuse them many times. And these harmonized efforts can also power waste reduction efforts, especially in the primary research that is being conducted globally. They can fit into the world of science advisors and many other people who need to be able to provide balanced communications about what we know and don't know. But another transformative aspect of this revolution that we're on the cusp of is really foregrounding equity and efficiency in all aspects of the work. If you haven't seen the Show Me the Evidence features, you can just look at that QR code and that will take you directly to the document. If we now go on, and I'll just say that those Show Me the Evidence features were an input into the decision by the Wellcome Trust to proceed. They are being read by the funding community, I think appropriately, as a sign that this is a community that is ready for big, bold investments, that it has a sense of what the vision is of a future that it will co-create with many different groups. What we at the Global Evidence Commission have been saying to funders and many others for some time is we desperately need collective action. For many, many years, we've suffered from people making these isolated investments, often contributing in very isolated ways to pieces of the infrastructure. And that infrastructure just keeps getting built and rebuilt over time. It's not shared and it's not distributed. At the bottom of this simple structure is the Wellcome Trust investment, a very bold $45 million investment in infrastructure. Their communication focused on 3 domains. I'm going to unpack them in a later slide into 5 discrete domains. We also, at the same time, had the investment announcement from the UK Research and Innovation Group, specifically from its Economic and Social Research Council. That will fund a suite of living evidence syntheses about accelerating progress towards the SDGs. Wellcome has already made some investments in suites of living evidence syntheses in the mental health space through the Galenos project, in the climate action space with AI tools. And I see colleagues on the line like Yan Ming, through Stewart, and others who are very involved in that work. They've also signaled a future intent to fund additional suites of living evidence syntheses. We knew that with these new announcements, the CEOs of both Wellcome, Jan-Arne Rottingen, CEO of the Economic and Social Research Council, Stian Westlake, were committed to not just make investments, but use their political and social capital to bring other funders to the table. And I've been thrilled to see a number of emails coming into the Wellcome Trust and going into the Economic and Social Research Council from other funders wanting a seat at the table, wanting to be part of putting money on the table for additional suites of living evidence syntheses. Some funders also very keen to help fund the top of this simple structure, the pediment, ways of serving up actionable insights for different sectors, for different types of decision makers, whether they be government policymakers, frontline service providers, or citizens. And in the top right of this slide, you'll see some different ways of serving up the same evidence, but in the education sector, in one instance as best buys, another instance broad approaches, and another instance branded programs. So we're now saying to the world, we really need all of this funded, and hopefully funders will come along and slot in their investments in a way that bring us to this much bigger picture. If we go on to the next slide, I just want to unpack a little bit about what was in the Wellcome Trust's intention to fund announcement. So the language that they used is very important. Evidence synthesis, infrastructure, collaborative. That infrastructure is meant to be used by all sectors. Health is only, depending on how you count, one of 10 broad government areas or one of 17 sustainable development goals, but this is meant to fund environment, climate action, crime and justice, social services, and so on. It will enable the production and use of evidence syntheses that can be used by many people. Evidence intermediaries like Laura Boera in Brazil, like Rona Majumbi in Malawi, who need to put that global evidence alongside many forms of local evidence. It will be used by offices across the UN system, the 45 UN agencies that are part of the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition. It will also be used by research funders and by researchers to shape next generation flows of primary research, as well as by many others. And the Wellcome Trust announcement puts collaboration within and across these groups at the heart of the effort. So we have the evidence synthesis community who's gathering today on this call and the one that we had earlier, the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition that gathered in New York last week. And I see Carrie Albright from UNICEF, Shiv Bakrania from UNDP on the line, key players in that coalition. There will likely be a funders group that comes together of the funders that are putting money on the table and want to ensure that these syntheses are used to reduce research waste. So there are many people with skin in the game that want to see this infrastructure succeed. The announcement, as I mentioned before, grouped what I think of as 5 domains into 3 for ease of communication. But the infrastructure includes demand-side engagement, so working through existing intermediaries to support national governments, UN agencies, and others, and to respond to their needs for evidence, data sharing and reuse, safe and responsible use of AI. There's a big need for methods and process innovation. I've singled out 2 here, foregrounding equity, diversity, and inclusion in how we approach evidence syntheses, how we ask our questions, how we present the results, how we pull together the teams, but also really thinking through how we do a better job at foregrounding context considerations so that if you're sitting in Brazil or if you're sitting in Malawi, it's easier to identify the actionable insights for environments like yours. And the final piece is capacity sharing through existing platforms so that leadership and production increasingly come from the global south. And I think a lot of us are so excited about this because it is a chance to reshape where the leadership and production comes from and see much more of it coming from the global south. We go on to the next slide. The intention to fund announcement, as many of you know, was for 45 million pounds, roughly 60,000 US dollars. It's important to say that the actual funding could take many forms as we become clear about what is needed when and how it can be best delivered. Step 1 could be a planning grant, and Isabel Fletcher from the Wellcome Trust was on the line this morning and has signaled to us that that is something that Wellcome is very interested in, a very thoughtful, participatory planning process, perhaps over the next 6 to 8 months to work through what is it that we really need. And I'll come back to an idea for what that planning process could look like. Step 2 could be some funding for quick wins. Step 3 could be a call or procurement process for wave 1 of the key infrastructure components. So this is not a big bang funding. This is funding that can come online as clarity emerges through a participatory planning process about what's needed. And as I mentioned before, hopefully more and more funders will be joining ESRC and Wellcome in leveraging this infrastructure, but funding those suites of living evidence syntheses and funding ways of serving up actionable insights or more sustainably funding platforms that already do this well, like the 3IE platform. And as I mentioned before, the hope is all of these future funding announcements will encourage grant recipients to leverage this emerging infrastructure. We have the good fortune to have a number of really thoughtful people within Wellcome who can help to steer. I'll be one of the advisors just quietly working in the background. I cannot apply for these funds. going forward, but I'm 150% invested in making sure all of you are supported to turn it into a big success. But this won't be a replacement for the evidence synthesis community being self-organizing and working through ongoing power dynamics. And we really want to hear from people about how do we do this in a way that works through those challenging issues of power dynamics. If we move on to the next slide, when we were in New York last week for the Summit of the Future Action event, the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition got together and had a chance to talk about, well, what might this look like? And as one of the groups with skin in the game, we thought it would be helpful to present back to this different group a sense of what this could look like from the perspective of the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition so that you can help to strengthen the ideas that are embedded here, or perhaps to suggest a different approach. But what was talked about by the coalition was, could we imagine a 6 to 8 month planning process supported by a number of groups? Current count in this, what we call the straw dog, 11 different groups, each of which could be co-chaired. So two co-chairs, at least one co-chair for each group coming from the Global South, and each of which would have representation from each UN region or each World Bank region. Could be 2 representatives from each, or it could be more. There's no good way to pick regions. The column headers in this table use the UN regions, but they leave out then the Middle East and North Africa as a dedicated group. The World Bank regions have their own challenges, but we can work out what those column headers are. The final are then the UN entities. The idea then for the groups is perhaps one steering committee, and I'll come back to the role that they could play. 5 working groups, each focused on an infrastructure element. So you'll recognize those 5 points, demand side management down through capacity sharing. But the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition, in that conversation, there was also the observation that there are many cross-cutting issues that need to be worked through, including a future governance model. So could we imagine planning groups that would focus on what's the future governance of the infrastructure? How do we approach partner engagement? How do we ensure effective communications with all of you on the line today, but the many more people that join this movement in future? Change management, because as you heard Zoe say, this is a very big change for our community. So how do we support that process? And then very much in keeping with the focus of the Alliance for Living Evidence, which is very interested in how do we learn as we go, as we start to put in place more and more living evidence syntheses, a planning group focused on monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So this is a straw dog. So in the morning conversation, people noted not everybody knows what that means. Just think of it as something that we're putting in front of you to get a reaction to say, yeah, we like that, but we'd like to see these parts changed, or we have a better idea. So this was an idea that came from a key counterpart in this initiative, the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition. On to the next slide. The other thing in talking this through at the coalition was when the group was talking about it, they said, could each group be accountable for delivering periodic memos that advance thinking on a topic related to its scope of work? And the idea is those memos would come on a relatively rapid basis, perhaps one every 2 weeks. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be thought through. And ideally, as we're doing this, we would be asking questions like, what is needed? How does that relate to the Show Me the Evidence features? What strengths are we already building on? What's the scale of an effort? Is a given infrastructure need small, medium, or large? Do we need it now? Do we need it next? Do we need it later? What are timelines for anticipated deliverables? So for a given domain, when would we have the current state map? Where would we have the diagnostic of what's most needed or where the gaps are? What are proposed ways forward? And what partnerships could we explore? The steering group could then review the memos as they're coming in, provide feedback, and identify candidate topics for future memos. So again, this is meant to be one expression of what the planning process could look like by one group with skin in the game, and we would love to hear your reactions to this, how to strengthen it, or is there an even better model for a planning process? We go on to the next slide. One other thing to think about for that point about think about anything that we think needs doing as part of the infrastructure, how does it relate to the show me the evidence consensus? And some of those show me the evidence features felt like they needed a bit more operationalization in order to bring them alive for us to know, does this piece of the infrastructure really help to advance the vision articulated in the show me the evidence consensus? Here on this slide, you'll see a couple of more detailed operationalizations of harmonized efforts globally. So the first statement borrowed directly from the ALIVE commitment, synthesis needs to be radically more relevant, more timely, more affordable, and synthesis needs to be established and supported across all topic areas. So those would be checks that we do against everything being proposed. Then for equity and efficiency in all aspects of the work, here's some additional ideas for how that could be operationalized. Synthesis needs to become global in power and participation. It needs to make the most of modern technology. It needs to provide reliable value for money for decision makers on the one hand, but also research funders on the other. And that connects back to the W feature in Show Me the Evidence, waste reduction efforts. Another way to operationalize it, being attentive to opportunity costs. Every dollar we spend on this could be spent on direct service provision, and new funding should not be used to perpetuate legacy operating models that cannot be sustained or organizational models that concentrate power in high-income countries. So again, as you can see, an effort to increasingly be concrete, and we're putting this in front of you to get your reactions to it. Are these helpful articulations of the future that we want to build with the evidence infrastructure? On to the next slide. When we think about what is most needed at each stage in a developmental life cycle, you can imagine filling out a table like this on the demand side engagement. One example of where we need to get to is questions are routinely elicited and prioritized in partnership with groups like the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition, like the IPCC AR7 report writers. For data sharing and reuse, we need ideally to get to a place where data are being shared across all key platforms. With safe and responsible use of AI, we need to get to the gated incorporations of humans in the loop AI tools across all of our platforms when the performance metrics justify it. And for methods and process innovations, we have a lot of methods work to do to know how to answer big policy scale questions, like how best to approach achieving the SDGs, questions about EDI methods, questions about how do we over time make sure the board membership of the key evidence synthesis organizations reflect their global role. And when it comes to capacity sharing, we ideally need to get to a space where synthesis teams have the continuing professional development needed to incorporate new methods and new process innovations like AI tools. So this is a bit of what the what part of the work could do, could get us to. If we move on to the next slide, this is the piece that when people see big dollar or big pound signs like 45 million pounds, 60 million US dollars, your mind immediately goes to the money. But I hope you'll agree that we need a really participatory planning process up front that brings people from around the globe to be clear about why are we doing it. Those show me the evidence features with their further operationalization that you can all help to shape. Then what do we need? And what are the different components? How small, medium, large are they? When do we need them? And then we will eventually get to how budget bids could work. For some domains, there may be only one obvious group around the globe. For others, a grant call or a procurement process that could be the way to go. So it feels like start with the why, move on in a participatory, equitable way to articulate the what, and eventually we will get to the how. We move on to the next slide. I guess what I'll close in is first I want to echo again Zoe's enthusiasm. This is so exciting to be able to build a fit for purpose infrastructure that will transform evidence synthesis world. It will require us to engage in rapid collaborative decision making. It will require us all to live with some uncertainty. Some of the questions that I would love to hear your feedback on in the weeks ahead are the wise statements good enough for now? What's your reaction to that straw dog that was proposed by one of the groups with skin in the game, the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition, a process that will get us to the what? And if you agree with a process that looks like that, what could a nomination process and adjudication process look like for the 11 groups or however many we end up with, so that it really is truly a participatory global effort that helps to shape what this infrastructure could look like? I think, Zoe, that's it. If we go to the next slide, yes, can I turn it back to you and back to your enthusiasm? Thanks.
Thanks, John. That was really helpful. I know we had a lot of feedback from the first call saying that it was really helpful to hear that information. So we're asking, could the people on this call imagine a time-limited process that is collaborative, that involves the formation of a global steering group with balanced representation, as John suggested, from different geographies, resource settings, and sectors? Could you imagine that there might be work streams that broadly relate to addressing the challenges that we face in relation to evidence synthesis that are co-led, that's really important here, that culminate in a meeting where we agree to the way forward, that is a reimagination of the global evidence synthesis architecture? Now, we did say, as I said at the top of the meeting, unfortunately, given the sheer numbers of people who have signed up for this meeting, we felt it was going to be really challenging to have meaningful dialogue online today. We want to give you an opportunity to digest what you've heard, to really think about it. And so we're going to circulate a recording of the meeting so that you can revisit it. We're going to develop a living question and answer document. And we'll also circulate a survey which will encompass things like the questions that John has posed today, to get your first responses, first reactions to what you've heard, to hear your thoughts and ideas, and to help us progress this in a collaborative way and think about what the next steps might look like to get this up and running. We are anticipating some more information to come from Wellcome. Once we have that information and we have the results of the survey and your feedback, we would like to organise a second meeting that hopefully can be a little bit more interactive. I'm just going to ask John and Carla and Will if they have any final closing comments before we finish the meeting.
Just to say thank you to everyone. I like Zoe and what John mentioned, I realize there's a lot to digest here. So we're also going to circulate a copy of the slides with the recording, and we'll come back to you with a plan for regular meetings. So bear with us. It's a lot but if in the same time you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to us. When you signed up, we saw our emails, and we'll be collecting this information and making sure that this living Q&A is actually interactive with all of this discussion.
And I'll just add many thanks to everyone involved in preparing this meeting so quickly. Although more than 600 people signed up for these meetings, the vast majority were English speaking at least as a primary language. So it's worth saying that we are well aware that we have more work to do to reach out to a truly global community. One of our commitments is to make sure that we're investing in translation and making participation available equally in multiple languages. this has been quick work, but we hope to strengthen that as time goes on.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you for your engagement. I'm going to bring the meeting to a close, but I look forward to hearing from you all soon and seeing you again in a few weeks.